All right. Then we had, this was a mom. Very obviously a mom to me because she wanted to know, the first thing she wanted to know was calm down.
Well, you could. There is a word "come toi." You could say that. I don't know if that's said a whole lot, depending on the regions you were. But most often, most of them would be. You would tell them to be still, which would be like "reste tranquille," "reste tranquille." Okay, and that's the way you would say that. You'd use the word "rester," which means to stay, "tranquille," which means to be calm and quiet. So "reste tranquille" would be the most common thing. That's what I heard more often as a kid.
Reste tranquille.
Reste tranquille. Reste tranquille.
Okay. And then if they were fighting, the little kids butt heads all the time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if they were fighting, you wanted the first to stop. So you would say, "Arrête ça," on va pas se battre, and we're not going to fight. Okay.
On va pas se battre.
On va pas se battre. We're not going to fight. Se battre meaning to fight. Se battre. On va pas se battre. No. You could say, on va. We're not gonna have a fight with it. Basically saying you're not gonna have a fight in the house, wherever you are. We're not gonna fight at all. Okay. You can just say, "On fait pas ça." We don't do that. Arrête ça. On fait pas ça. Probably something like that.
That's good. That's good. Stop begging. Definitely a mom.
Stop begging. Well, begging is the word "kimonde" or "chimonde." You might hear "kimonde" or "chimonde," so you could say "arrête de chimonde" or "arrête de commander." So that would probably be the best way. Stop begging. That's an interesting one. I never really.
What is the word for beg?
Kimonde or chimonde, depending on where you're from around the area. But it's the basic word to beg. It's spelled Q. One of the things you'll find in Louisiana French is this. It's something associated with traditional Acadian French as well. Is that the sound of ch, which becomes the ch sound, which can be placed on certain words beginning with the Q, or which is used with words beginning with ti, But interesting in traditional Acadian French up in Canada many years ago, it was like every one of those sounds was ch. So anytime you would hear a q sound would become ch. And in modern Canadian French, they only use it for certain words, and like in modern Louisiana French, only certain words. So you'll definitely hear it used a lot. There's a question, for example, like for a word for tail. Is it, some people say la queue, some people say la ch. For a tail, you have words like
but not la tu.
Well, well, that we use actually both ways, but more often the chu. The chu. We don't want to use that, but we use that more often. But there is a couple of things like that you'll hear those words very often. For example, you'll hear for moitié, a half, was moche. Moche. For tien is chien more often than not in Louisiana French. You'll hear that ch sound. And so kimonde is one of those words you might hear chimonde or kimonde.
Yeah. Okay. And then she put, "What can I cook for supper?" And I think what she more meant by that was, what are you guys, this is always a battle in my house. What are you guys willing to eat for supper?
Yeah, so just you can just say, well, depending on what region you're from, you may quoi c'est qu'on va manger pour souper, or if you're in a key region, qu'est-ce qu'on va manger pour souper, you can just say whatever it was. Or she can simply say, quoi tu veux que je cuise? Okay, what do you want me to cook? If you're speaking to the whole group, okay, qu'est-ce que vous autres veut pour manger? Qu'est-ce que vous autres pour souper? Qu'est-ce que vous autres veut pour souper? So you have all these different kind of ways to do it. I don't know if you've addressed kind of this issue of quoi and qui before with the students, but you have regions in Louisiana where the word for what is more preferably quoi, and other regions more qui. If you look at regions, for example, like you look at St. Martin Parish, Terrebonne, Lafourche Parish, up in parts of Evangeline Parish, of Royals Parish, it's more of a qui region where they use qui for quoi. Other regions they'll use quoi. What's interesting is that you don't typically hear the traditional international French term of qu'est-ce que, or you don't hear what they say internationally. They would say c'est quoi rather than quoi c'est. You would hear quoi c'est que, qui c'est que, and sometimes it puts all together, and qui c'est que. You'll hear that kind of thing. Quoi que, you might hear instead of saying qu'est-ce que, you hear quoi que, kind of thing like that. You might hear some of those things. So, but depending on the region where you're from, most Louisianians were, like, for example, since there are more regions that say Kwa than Ki, when the Kwa persons, they'll meet a Ki person, the Ki persons pretty much understand it. However, sometimes when this person comes from a Ki region and they see Ki into the Kwa regions, it can get misunderstood because Ki is also the word for who.
Mm-hmm.
So it sometimes gets so it was always like we always say, qui tu veux manger? In some region that means, well, who do you want to eat? So we're not cannibals, no. But if you start thinking about it, they're not cannibals. So obviously they come from a Ki region where they would say Ki, but you don't even hear that. Some region they use both. I mean, there's an old song by the Bolfa brothers, and they're from Mamou, and that's in the regions where you hear both, and it's called Rosina. And in the first line, he says, Rosina, quoi tu veux manger? And the last line, he says, Rosina, qui tu veux manger? Mm-hmm. Which shows that he comes from a region where they're both said. That's that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then if you want, we haven't actually talked a lot about questions, but maybe explain qu'est-ce que or ce que?
Yeah, ce que, well, est-ce que traditionally is the word used to make something a question internationally. It just signals as a question. It's very hard to translate word for word exactly what it means, but it's used in question words. And in Louisiana French, it's either, if it is said, it's more often said as ce que. So you're going to hear it following. You'll hear it more often using certain question words, like the words for to where. Here, I use ce que t'es parti. Where are you going? You hear it with a word like where. You hear it sometimes you'll hear it, like I said, with kiske, you'll hear it in that as well. Some words you won't hear it as often. I don't hear pourquoiske very often. It's more just pourquoi. You won't hear it at all with that word. And of course, the other word we have for why, pourquoi, is quoi faire. You never hear it with quoi faire. But it's a word that's used at times. Now, it is used internationally, if you just want to say, for example, the idea of is it, like this is happening, like you'll hear est-ce que, hear the est-ce que used at the beginning of a sentence. We almost never use it at the beginning of a sentence. And it's something more often used following like a question word. If you wanted to just ask something, you would simply ask it in a declarative manner, but with the rising intonation, Mm-hmm. So instead of saying est-ce que t'as faim, you would say t'as faim? Right, just with the rising intonation. So, but the ske you're going to hear in certain, you heard a lot with the verb for to wear. I use ske t'es parti. You can hear it with quand sometimes. Quand est-ce qu'il vient? When is he coming? You hear it. Quand?
And it's just kind of a way of indicating it's a question.
Yeah.
Right?
So when you do hear it's a question, yes, ske is a question. Yeah. So.
Awesome. Okay. What are you cooking?
Oh, quoi t'appelles cuire?
Quoi t'appelles
cuire? Cuire said the word for cooking. Quoi t'appelles cuire? Now, I'll just make a special point about this, is that in Louisiana French, cuire, we use cuire, which is interesting from international French, okay? Because what you're cooking in international French, food cooks, okay? You don't cook the food. So you have to have, in international French, they would say, what they would use the term faire cuire, okay? Which would mean that you're actually making something cook. Like it's faire meaning to make.
Right.
But not in Louisiana French. In fact, faire cuire means you're having somebody else cook it for you.
Oh wow.
J'ai fait cuire des haricots. I had someone cook some beans for me. J'ai cuit des haricots. I cooked my beans.
Okay.
So quoi tu veux cuire, qui tu veux cuire, quoi ce que tu cuis, quoi ce que tu as appris cuire, qu'est-ce que tu as appris cuire. These are all just good ones. The term cuire is spelled C-U-I-R-E, and in the present tense, singular becomes cuit.
All right.
You'll hear that.
And what about kitchen?
Kitchen is la cuisine. And you do have a verb called cuisiner, which might some use it time to time in Louisiana French, but we don't use it as often as cuire. That's because that cuisiner and faire cuire in international French means the same thing.
Right.
In Louisiana French, cuisiner and just cuire would mean the same thing, but we use more often cuire.
Okay. And then I didn't actually write it down, but I had another person ask, what do you call it when you're warming something up on the stove?
Oh, that's chauffer.
Chauffer.
Réchauffer.
Oh, réchauffer.
Réchauffer, parce que you would have to reheat it. So it's basically it's the word for reheat, so réchauffe. So tu vas réchauffer, va réchauffer le dîner, le souper, réchauffer. And so it literally means to reheat. It also means to warm up. On va se réchauffer. We're going to, let's say you're getting warmed up for your exercise or whatever, on va se réchauffer as well. In addition, for example, a good thing too is that the word for heater, a common word for a heater in Louisiana French is la réchauffe, because you're going to use heating things up.
What about a stove? A
stove, we typically call it a stove.
A stove, okay.
Now, they're not they call it a cuisinier, but most often we call it a stove. I've heard some people call it a poêle, but poêle is more often a pot or a pan. A poêle, I should say, more often a pot or a pan. But more often I've always called it a stove. I sit down, that's the stove. But some people will say. I mean, I've heard cuisinier, I've heard poêle, for depending on depending on the region. But it's one of those words that we typically, it's one of those words we adapted from English and we use it.
Yeah. And actually he grew up with his dad is first language French.
Okay.
But his dad called it a stove.
A stove, yeah.
Like, well, what do we call it? So it's like, man, maybe it's kind of like truck.
Yeah. But there's certain words too that that may have, like, there's a lot of words you would think, okay, that sounds like the English word, understanding words, but in fact it probably was an older French word. There's a lot of words like that you don't realize, that it has an older French meaning, and so so sometimes they got lost along the way, but there's a word, I'm trying to think of a good word. Condy for candy. Condy is an older French word. It's found it originally came to France from the Arabic, but it came to them. I think it was a word for sugar, something like in Arabic maybe, and it came to France. They still use it as an adjective in the French dictionary internationally, but it becomes the word for candy for us, condy. But people think, oh, it just sounds like the English word. No, it actually comes another way around.
Don't say that too loud because my kids are going to hear this and they're going to come looking for it.
For the condy, yeah.
Condy, bonbon.
Okay.
All of that. All right. How about what are we eating? Or what are we going to eat?
What are we going to eat? Oh, okay. Qu'est-ce qu'on va manger? Qu'est-ce qu'on va manger? Okay. So you can just use that same future tense we just talked about, va manger. Yeah, in that sense, if you say, what are we eating, you would probably not use the present tense there because it's obvious you're talking about what are we about to eat, So it's so you probably use the future tense there.
Okay. This was one from a mom. Mm-hmm. She wants her kids to ask this in French.
Yeah.
Can I have a snack?
Ah, okay.
And the word for snack and the term snack in general.
Yeah. Well, it depends on. It's another word that's a little regional too at times as well. There are a couple of different words for snack. One is snack. One could just be un petit quelque chose à manger, there was something to eat.
Petit quelque chose à manger.
Petit quelque chose à manger. You can also have what is called un casse-croûte. Casse-croûte, which means to break the crust, and casse-croûte is another word for snack. Another would be an collation. Collation. You'll find that in some old French songs talk about la collation. It mean like like party food that came out. La collation. Il y avait la collation il y avait une noce avec une grande collation avec beaucoup de noce, a wedding, and we had a reception with lots of appetizers and hors d'oeuvres. So you're hearing those, but quelque chose à manger, a snack, and casse-croûte and collation. And again, it all depends on your family, your region. There's not one kind of word that's predominant throughout the state
right.
With that. Yeah.
What about snack time? Do we have a
no, there's no such thing as snack time. No, anytime you can get a snack.
All time.
But there, it's just that there are certain times, as the old days, there were certain times where you would have, I always talk about this when I would go, there were times where you would go visit, and in the old days where you could go visit, and it would never, you wouldn't have to call, the knock, you just go visit. And one was mid-morning and mid-afternoon, like you come around 10 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock, and you would always go and you would always get something to eat, no matter how house you go. And you would always get some coffee. So whenever that you go visit in the old days, you go like at 10 o'clock or 3 o'clock, you show up somebody's house, it was considered no. Like if you just showed up for supper at supper time, unless it was your family, it was considered kind of rude. But your family could show up, of course. But if you were just showing up to visit somebody, you could show up and you would expect to have your snacks, and you would be treated to coffee and snacks, and whatever. And if all they had was crackers and butter, you'd have some crackers and butter.
Right. Now so the evening was la veille, right?
La veille, well, yes.
Was the morning la matinee, or?
Well, we never did. I don't know if we ever called it la matinee. I think it was just called. I'm going to call it just. I think it was was there a good name for it? I don't know. Just in visit. I don't know. In visit du matin.
Okay.
What's interesting too, you might have like we used to have my grandfather had his friend Miss Inez. Miss Inez would always come over around 10 o'clock. And then I would see my grandma fix him a special coffee. I said, can I have some of his coffee? No, you can't have his coffee. I said, we had a pousse cafe. Always had a shot of liquor. But even at 10 o'clock in the morning, he had that.
Yeah. Called
a pousse cafe. It means like coffee with some liquor in it. Yeah. So.
Yep. Du whisky avec.
Ouais.
Okay. So yeah, just one more time slow, because it's going to be for the kids. They're going to practice this one. Can I have a snack?
Okay. All right. You can say that's about. But normally we just say, Je peux avoir un petit snack, je peux avoir, you hear that? Je peux avoir un petit snack, je peux avoir un petit quelque chose à manger. That's normally what a kid would do. Je peux avoir un snack, maman, you know, okay. You would just say, je peux avoir, just like, can I have, you know.
Je peux avoir. That's a good one for kids to learn, period.
Yeah.
We're going to get them to practice that on the Padlet. Let's see. Here we go. Are you ready? I think we've covered this one, but if they're asking...
T'es paré.
Yeah.
If you're talking to one person, t'es paré. If you're talking to more than one person, vous êtes paré. Or you can just say, paré, like that, you know. So just ask them with the rising intonation. Paré, t'es
Right.
paré, vous êtes paré. Okay, just paré. And again, that paré is a great word. It's and which I love about it. It means to get a boat ready officially in international French. One of those great nautical terms we have in the language.
Really?
Come from, yes, in international French, it means to ready a boat, to get a boat ready, get a boat all fixed up, you know. And so it doesn't mean, and typically they use the term prêt or prête, but we always use paré. But it's an Acadian thing. It's one of the things that came from the Acadians as well. There are a few words like that we get from the idea of our attachment to the sea that are associated with that. Paré is one of those words. The other one is amarré or amarré, meaning to tie, which internationally means to moor a boat to a wharf, you know. But we'll say amarré tes souliers, you know, and so.
Amarré tes souliers, tie your shoes.
Amarré tes souliers, you know. Internationally, they would refer to attaché. And I told my dad once, I said, what did they say in international? They said, they say attaché. Oh, that would hurt if you did that. For him, that meant like you're probably like nailing him or stapling to your foot. Attaché, you know, no, amarré. I wouldn't attaché mes souliers.
Yeah.
But it's one of those words that comes from it was used nautically, and we use it in all senses, meaning to tie up something, you know. There are a couple of great words that I love that we use. For example, there's a great term, griller. You ever heard that term, griller?
I don't think so.
Griller. Griller is a term from nautical. It means like to rig up a boat, like to get it all set to sail, rig it up. And it means you have all the necessary riggings and equipment on your boat to equip your boat. And we use it to means, we use it in all kind of ideas. Like to griller means you're provided with what you need. You have, so si t'es griller, it means you got everything you need, okay? I'll give you a good example, okay? One Christmas, my mom asked me, she said, Kirby, qu'est-ce que tu veux pour Christmas? I said, Mom, je fais pas rien. I don't need nothing for Christmas. And he goes, well, Kirby, you got to have something. And Mom, he said, okay, des consons. I said, I need some new underwear. So she had everybody in the family buy me underwear.
Oh my God.
So I got open underwear. So I had new pairs of, you know, I had Hanes and Fruit Loom, had everything in the world, boxers, everything. And there was my la marraine, my mom, her nanette, her godmother. She says, "Oh, latte grillé, boo. You know, there you are. You've all fixed up. You got all consons that you need for her." So, but there's an old expression like in Louisiana French, griller Saint-Pierre pour griller Saint-Paul. It's like rob Peter to pay Paul.
Okay.
Griller and dégriller, which is another great nautical term that we use just to mean you're supplied with all the equipment.
So in French, if we put day in something,
they always they can counter just about any verb,
right?
You know, so
if we dégriller, now we're not ready. Griller, we have everything we need.
Yeah.
Dégriller, we have nothing we need.
Exactly. So, example, let's suppose something, you know, the kid got in trouble, il est puni, which means he's punished, you know, and all of a sudden one of the parents comes along and the other one's mad. T'as dépuni le garçon? You unpunished him?
Okay, that makes sense.
But you can use day in front of us about any word.
Dépuni. My kids have done that before.
Yeah. Get one parent to dépuni after they're punied from the other.
Yep, that's good. All right. So if the kids are getting ready and they're not ready yet, you want them to hurry up.
Oh, dépêche-toi. Dépêche. Dépêchez-vous. Dépêche-toi. Dépêchez-vous autres. Something like that. But dépêche is the word to hurry up. And so you could use it, and if you're talking to one person, just dépêche-toi. And you typically like hurry yourself. They always use it, you know. You can just say dépêche. You can more insist on the person, dépêche-toi. If it's all of them, dépêchez or dépêchez-vous. Dépêchez-vous autres.
Okay. And what if they're trying to tell you, well, I am hurrying?
Yeah. Oh, they would say, what? Je suis en train de dépêcher, you know. Or je dépêche. They might just say it like that, you know. But,
right.
Yeah, okay. But that's it, you know.
Okay. All right. Get in the truck or get in the car.
Okay. Well, you can say embarque dans le char, like to embark. Embarque dans le char, embarque dans le truck, embarque dans le char. You can say rentre dans le char, which is just rentre is Well, and the word entrer is to enter, and but in Louisiana French we often say rentrer, which is re-enter to mean entrer a lot. And so you might hear a person say entrer dans le char or entre dans le char or rentre dans le char, débarque. I'm sorry, embarque dans le char, débarque is the opposite. There's a day again. I'm trying to think of another thing. Yeah. Or mets-toi dans le char, put yourself in the car, something like that, So
Mets-toi dans le char.
mets-toi dans le char.
Okay. That's what I tell my kids.
Yeah.
Mets-toi dans le char.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things too. You can put yourself in a certain position to do things, and you can use it. And that's a very common thing with different verbs. Mets-toi en ligne. Like I said, if a kid while I'm at school, mets-toi en ligne. Put yourself in line.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, it's a very common expression.
Mets-toi. Put yourself.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's good.